Hey, this is Clayton with Everything Ponds, and today we are going to talk about dog ponds. We get quite a few calls from people who are looking to build a pond, and they want all the normal benefits of a pond, but they also are looking for a way for their dog to cool off in the summer or have a place for their dog to get a little bit of exercise, especially older dogs or dogs with hip problems. So sometimes people start with something cheap for this. They start with like a kiddie pool or some kind of tank, and they put some water in it and they let their dog swim in it. The main issue is you're going to have to constantly replace that water because you don't have a filtration system. Another problem is the pools are generally pretty cheap. They can crack over time. And then generally they just don't look very good. So a lot of people, they want to build a natural, nice-looking pool or pond that can also function as a dog swimming pond. So the main benefit of building a custom pond as your dog swimming pond is, first of all, it looks great in your landscape. You get the sound of natural running water if you build a waterfall. It uses a lot less water than a similarly sized piece of grass, which a lot of people don't realize. All you really have to deal with is evaporation. You're not constantly putting water in every day like you do with grass. So another benefit is if you use a good filtration system, it's fully self-cleaning, as opposed to a kiddie pool that you're constantly adding new water to. One nice thing about building a natural custom pond is you can kind of design it for whatever you need. And if you need an area for an animal to go in and out, you can design the edge to handle that traffic. Versus a kiddie pool, which if you just throw it on your lawn, can generally turn into a giant mud pit in pretty short order with the dog going in and out. So there's a few extra things you want to take into consideration if you're building a dog swimming pond or any pond where animals in general are going to be coming in and out. For one, you're going to want to protect the liner. And two, you're going to want to make sure there's a way for them to get out effortlessly. So let's say you built a Japanese koi pond, which generally have vertical walls. That's going to be a really bad idea if you're trying to have an animal get in and out, because they're going to swim up to the wall, they're going to be thrashing, trying to get over this vertical wall. A better way is to have one area where you have a nice gentle slope they can get out. You could do that with a continuous slope, or you could do slight steps, but just some way that they can walk out of that pond without having to jump over anything or thrash around. The thrashing around is important both for the animal, not to hurt itself, but also because the thrashing is what can damage the liner. So this also applies to large animals getting in a pond. Like let's say in a farm pond, if you had a deer wander in, you always want to make sure there's a way for animals to get out, because if they start slipping and they're trying to walk up a steep slope, they can thrash and damage the liner. So a nice gentle slope, and then we want to protect the liner. So we usually recommend putting a layer of geotextile fabric over top. That's also called pond underlayment. That protects the liner as well as adds some friction. So now they're not stepping on a slippery liner, they're stepping on the actual underlayment fabric. And then what we recommend is taking it one step further and putting some kind of fill material over top. So you could put sand or river rock or some kind of pea gravel, something over top. So now when the dog's walking out, they're walking on like a nice cushion of material. Underneath that, the underlayment, and then underneath that is the liner. So even if they're quite aggressive, they're running in and out, there's lots of dogs, really, the claws should never really touch the liner if you do your job right. So adding in some river rock or other kind of decorative material to put over top of the liner, in addition to protecting the liner, it also actually gives you a little bit of extra filtration. So anytime you add aggregate material, beneficial bacteria can colonize on that, and that can really help with the cleanliness of the pond. And of course, maybe the most obvious reason for covering the liner is just to hide the liner. Nobody likes to look at a black liner sticking out of their pond. It also helps protect the liner from UV as well. So in general, we recommend filtering all ponds, but depending on what's in that pond will determine how much filtration you really need. Like let's say you have a pond, nobody's ever going in it, doesn't have any fish. In general, you can be a little more relaxed about your filtration, but let's say you have a ton of fish in there, now you have all this fish waste, you're gonna have to filter more. The same thing with dogs. If you've got a couple dogs going in all the time, maybe they're bringing in dirt or other organic material, you're going to need to filter that pond a little extra. So for more info about pond filters and pond kits, you can head over to our pond kit page. We'll put a link below this video to that as well. So one healthy part of a good filtration system is adding plants to your pond. The filters naturally produce nitrates, which then goes into the water. That is a natural plant food that can aid in algae growth. So if you put plants into the pond, it can suck those nutrients out before it goes to algae. So we always say that plants are an important part of any ecosystem pond. So before I mentioned the kiddie pool on a lawn and how that might turn into a big mud pit pretty quickly. When you're designing your pond, you're going to want to think about that and the high traffic areas where people or animals are coming in and out. If there's sort of wet dogs coming in and out and there is water dripping all over the ground, you're just going to want to make sure there's something down that's not going to turn into that mud pit. You know, something like pavers or gravel or some kind of decorative material that's not muddy. So the next natural question might be, what kind of liner should you use? Our go-to liner is the premium RPE liner for something like this, just because it is quite a bit stronger and more puncture resistant than EPDM. The 40 mil, that's our thickest one. That's the one I would probably recommend for dogs, especially big dogs. I mean, if you have a really small dog, maybe you don't have to worry about it as much. But another choice just under that one would be the 30 mil laminated. That's also a good liner, although it is not nearly as puncture resistant as the 40 mil, which is double reinforced, extra puncture resistant. The 40 mil liner, although it is stronger, it is a little stiffer to fold. I would say it's a non-issue for most ponds. It's just something to keep in mind if you have an application where you have a ton of folding and pleating and you need the most bendable liner. Maybe go with the 30 mil laminated. It's quite a bit more bendable. So what about EPDM? Will it work? I would say yes, as long as you protect it. So it's softer, it's not reinforced. For dog's claws, I kind of like the stronger material, the RPE instead. The EPDM will work as long as you protect it very well. The other thing about RPE is it's quite a bit lighter, and we can make these single pieces any size you want, up to 60,000 square feet in a single piece. So we can kind of just ship you this one liner. With EPDM, oftentimes you might have to do some seaming on site. Unless it's a very small pond, you can get single pieces that fit it. In general, though, I like the RPE just because of how much more puncture resistant it is. And if there's any chance that dogs' claws might come in contact with the liner, I would go with premium RPE. So if you don't want to do any folding or pleating, you could purchase one of our rectangular drop-in liners. And those are 3D shaped rectangular liners. We also make cylindrical shaped ones. And you can kind of drop those into a hole in the ground that's the exact shape or some kind of a frame. And then you end up with this really nice, clean, rectangular or cylindrical liner. The only problem for dog pools or ponds is that they have vertical walls. So you'd have to build some kind of a staircase or shelf or system for them to get out. As long as you did that, those liners would also work fine. So how do we make this pond the most fun for your dog? So here's a few ideas. Some dogs like to run laps around ponds. So if you can build some kind of a path or a running area around the pond that they can run and access various areas, maybe you could make a couple different accesses for them to jump in, or maybe like a jumping rock. Energetic dogs really might like that. Another thing you could add is some kind of water feature, like a spitter or a waterfall. Some dogs like to bite at water, so a spitter can be a really fun thing for a dog. Another thing to think about is the depth of the water. So if the dog is going to be jumping in, maybe you want to have a nice deep area, but then maybe you also want to have a shallow wading area, especially for maybe older dogs or dogs that don't like to swim. They just like to wade in, maybe lay down in some shallow water. That could be a great feature. So those three things will definitely make it more enjoyable for your dog as well as your family. You know, pets are a part of our family, so I think it's important to design the pond for them as well. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions about any of this, need help sizing a pond kit, filtration systems, pumps, liners, anything like that, feel free to call us, email us, or we also have online chat on our website. I'm Clayton with Everything Ponds, and I hope you have a great day.